All right, everybody. Well, my name is Jay English, and I want to welcome you to the next episode of the Cross-Cultural Coach VideoCast, where we've got a great conversation tonight. We're going to be talking about COVID-19, these vaccinations that they are wanting everyone to do, where people like me are saying, I don't know if I want to get in line just yet. And I've got some people here who are going to help put some of my fears at ease and hopefully answer some of your questions as well. I'm very happy to have Ruth and Doug Lindberg here. But before we jump into that, I've got to do something very quickly because I believe I've got some very special viewers. If you are looking, I've got this wonderful t-shirt on here, and I'm going to go ahead and just put this out here. There's a young man named Ethan, and he has a brother named Keegan. And Ethan came up with a great idea of how to solve all of our cross-cultural problems. He said, basically, if people would just love other people, we would have less problems. And I completely agree with him. So he drew this picture that literally is of a young African-American kid and a white kid, and the white kid is telling the African-American, you're loved. So Ethan, I want to say thank you so much for this wonderful picture. I know that Keegan's, it was your idea to put it on t-shirts and masks and everything else. So I want to thank both of you. I want to thank your incredible mom, Dana, who didn't just send me this t-shirt, but she also puts a few extra gifts in there for somebody like me. She put peanut butter M&Ms. Oh, you don't know. You won my heart. When I opened that bag, I picked up the shirt and I was thankful. And then I picked up the M&Ms and I was like, ooh, she knows me. So thank you so much. My daughter, she sent her a red teddy bear that actually got my daughter in trouble. She had a play date yesterday and she allowed the young girl to play with every toy except for that teddy bear because it was hers. But she said that's her new favorite toy. So again, Dana, thank you so much. Ethan, I appreciate this shirt and just your idea of how to fix this. And I agree. We're doing everything we can to help people love each other better. So thank you, both of you. Now, I want to introduce our special guests for tonight. And I met them, and it's funny how you meet people and you have no idea. You have no idea what they do outside of the conversation. Back in June, we launched Kneel for 9, and we had a location in Brookfield, Wisconsin, that these two wonderful people headed up, and they took that and they ran with it and got a group of people together to kneel and to really come together around the ideas of racial reconciliation. And we have stayed in contact since then. Doug and I have been inboxing off and on for the last several months. My wife, I found out, had met Ruth, and it was like, all this stuff was just happening separately, and we're having conversations, which is amazing. And then a few days ago, Ruth posts on the Kneel for 9 page all of this incredible information about COVID-19, about vaccines, and she's like, yes, and by the way, I happen to be a family physician. And I was like, well, hey, that's great. I know your husband, and it's great that you're a physician. And she's like, yeah, he's one too. But you know what would be wonderful? Talking to both of you and having a conversation that I believe is so important, because there are people like myself who are struggling right now. We're being encouraged to get something that we're not sure about. And I'll be very honest with you. African-American community definitely has some issues and has some trust problems when it comes down to the government telling us what we should and shouldn't take. Trust issues with the medical field in general in a lot of areas. So I can't say there's a lot of us who are lining up and looking forward to getting this. And, we want to have that conversation. But what I want to do first is allow you an opportunity to introduce yourselves and tell us a bit more about who you are and what you do and why this is important.
You want to start? Okay. So we're Doug and Ruth Lindberg, and I'll just do my intro, then you can do yours. So I'm a family doc. I work for Pro Healthcare in their urgent care department. Grew up in Chicago, went to med school up here and down in Chicago, did residency up here. Ruth and I actually served as cross-cultural missionaries in Nepal for 4 years. And now we've been back here for about 7, almost 8 years. And so we have 2 kids, Maddie and James, 9 and 12 years old. And I'll kick it to you.
You can tell them what you do for work?
Yes, I did. I work. So I work for Pro Health, and I also serve on the elder board at Elmbrook Church. And
Yeah. So I'm Ruth. And Jay, we're just so appreciative of this opportunity to share and answer questions. There's lots of questions. I think probably Doug and I have conversations about COVID and vaccine probably every day with other people, and so many of our nighttime conversations with each other about COVID and things that come up. So I'm originally from the Chicago area. My parents actually immigrated from the Philippines in the 70s. And my sisters and I were born and raised in Chicago. And Doug and I met in med school down there, and we came up here after for residency. So I'm a family physician also, but since my kids were small, I've been mostly at home with them, being a stay-at-home mom, but I am practicing a couple times a month in a worksite clinic in Waukesha, where I take care of the employees of one company and their families. So I have keep my toe a little bit dipped into medicine, but staying abreast of everything related to COVID and something that I think probably all of us in this country, and if not the world, have been affected some way or another by this vaccine, this virus.
Well, I'm so excited to have you two. And like I said, I know we connected through Kneel for Nine. If I can just ask, what was it about that moment or that idea that made you to, really step up and say, hey, we want to be a part of this. We want to do this.
So I grew up in a pretty white environment in the northern suburbs of Chicago, and attended med school in Loyola in Chicago, and during that time attended a church that was about two-thirds black, one-third white, very intentional about addressing racial reconciliation issues and dialogue, and then during, we went, like I said before, we went on to serve as cross-cultural missionaries. So it's something that's been on our radar, but then moving back here, this felt like we both just kind of got comfortable, I would say, and issues that we had noticed and been passionate about. It's not that we weren't passionate about them anymore or saw them as being problematic. It's just they kind of faded into the background with other things that were going on in life. And I think the events of this past year were just, a wake-up call. And it's I feel kind of ashamed to say that it takes such awful things happening to make us sit up and take notice. But that's kind of what happened. And so we've been engaging and reading and talking and watching and just interfacing with this issue and trying to ask what can we do to learn, what can we do to help, and just opening ourselves to that. So
after George Floyd was killed, I remember, Jay, so we go to we're part of Elmbrook Church in Brookfield, and I remember when you spoke and we had a video during one of our services, and watching that online where you were talking to one of our pastors, Mike. Yeah. And so that was my first introduction to you, and you just had maybe a 5-minute conversation about, what can we do, as Christians, how can we be part of the solution to this and being part, no longer being part of the problem. And so that was my first introduction to Kneel for Nine, or our first one. And then when you had planned the second meal for July, I remember you sharing a video and you sharing just how much it meant to you to see other people who didn't look like you, kneeling and being, kneeling in solidarity. And I remember part of that video that you said, it just showed just Christian unity, and you said, when I hurt, you hurt, and when you hurt, I hurt. I said, that's something that we need to be part of, and we need to do something, and so when you shared the opportunity to do a meal, I said to Doug, like, we need to try to get this together and do this. And so that was just a step that we could take.
Yeah.
And then for this, this time I'm doing this broadcast with you, it's just another step that we can take to be, to be unified, with our brothers and sisters.
Well, I appreciate you both. It's crazy how you meet through something as wild as that, and you all were an amazing help for the Kneel for 9 and continue to be. So thank you. I want to start by, we've got a couple of questions even coming in now, and they're the questions that I want to ask. And, I'm going to ask these questions and really just allow you to educate me, educate us, those that are watching. And for those of you that are watching, I'm going to ask you, please share this right now to your pages. We want to try to get this information out to as many people as we possibly can. Even if there's people that you want to see this later, make sure that they know they can come to the Kneel for 9 page, they can come to the Plain English page, or you can share that from wherever. We want to try to help people tonight, and that's really our goal. But one of the main questions that literally just came through a little bit ago was that it seems this vaccine was made so quickly compared to anything else that I'm aware of, or even other people that I know are aware of. Was that, is that safe? Because I think that's a safety concern. Number one is like, man, this was made so fast. It seemed like it was somewhat, hey, we have this virus is happening. Oh, look, 8 months later, we have a vaccine ready. And I thought that took years to create. So I guess, from a safety perspective, what are your thoughts? What is kind of the process, and how were they able to do this so quickly? Sure.
Yeah. And this process has been a lot faster than vaccines in the past, but there are a lot of reasons for that. So one of the reasons was that it's not that it was rushed, but that it was prioritized. Because we're, I think the last global pandemic was 1918. And so, so much has, we just haven't been in a situation like this before. So with vaccines in the past, there wasn't this singular focus, like we need to take care of this problem right now. And so, when you have, governments, countries, and different companies all over the world saying we are making this our number one priority, you can get things happening a lot faster than vaccines in the past. So I think that's one reason for it.
Yeah.
There's been a lot more funding I think a big difference has been that there has been government funding for this. So previous vaccines would be more private funding, which just depends on who's going to fund, who's willing to cough up that money. But when you have governments pouring in, their resources, then, things can happen a lot faster than they have in the past. And also, I think there's like 50 something different companies, pharmaceutical companies, who are working on vaccines right now.
Yeah.
So we know about the Pfizer one, Moderna. We've heard about AstraZeneca, but like all over the world, there's like 50 working on this, and we've never seen that before in our lifetimes. So
I would add two other things. One is one of the hindrances sometimes in testing vaccines is a lack of prevalence of the disease in the population, and the blessing and the curse. I mean, it's a curse that COVID spread so widely so quickly, but because of that, there were so many people being exposed that you could see pretty quickly whether or not the vaccine was having an effect or not, compared with, Ebola, which comes up and, there's, a few tens of thousands of people who are exposed and then it dies down again and then it pops up, or SARS or things like that, where they just weren't as widespread. So this one, because it was everywhere, we could tell if there was an effect or not very quickly. Mm-hmm. I think one other thing that's worth saying is that it was probably a poor choice of titles when the government decided to call this Operation Warp Speed, because
yes, people like me struggle because I'm like, warp speed. That doesn't sound like something I want you. You ever had that feeling that some things should take longer? That's how I felt about this.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, I see what they were trying to say. They were trying to say, we're going to pour everything we got into this, and we're going to try and find a solution as quickly as we can. But the unfortunate result when you come out on the other end, and I think that there will be a Nobel Prize from this at some point, from what's gone on here. But at this point where we're at, it does cause you some pause when you recognize the fact that this is 5 times faster than any other vaccine has come to market.
Yes,
which is remarkable.
Yes.
Some of it too is also just, even the last 10, 20 years, how many technological advances there have been that 50 years ago with older vaccines we didn't have. So what was it, by January that they already had the virus gene sequence, that they already had that information. And then there's this newer technology for the mRNA vaccines where they could say, okay, we know what the genome is of this virus. We can start working on something right away that can be used in a vaccine. It's so
awesome. Well, I've got another question coming in here, and so it's people. I don't even have to go through my list right now. People are asking my list, which is wonderful because that means what we're doing is working and reaching people that need it. But someone's asking the question of side effects. Specifically, if you already know you have pre-existing conditions, this person specifically is referencing conditions such as heart issues, diabetes, that could be high blood pressure. That could be any of the pre-existing conditions that are pretty prevalent. Should those individuals be worried about taking this vaccine? And should they be waiting for a little bit? Should they be, basically in my line, hey, I'm probably going to take it, but I don't want to take it first. I want to see something not happen to the first group. What are kind of your thoughts as far as what are the potential side effects? And what would you advise someone who knows they have pre-existing conditions?
So my advice to them would be, okay, if you're my friend or my parents or whomever, or just this person that I care about who is asking this question, I'd be banging down the door to get this. And full disclosure, I'm getting this vaccine on Monday, and that's the first day I'll be able to get it, and I will roll up my sleeve and take it ASAP immediately. But particularly people who have pre-existing conditions, which put you at increased risk for complications from COVID, that would include diabetes, heart disease, kidney disease, obesity, older age, anyone over 60, these sorts of conditions put you at increased risk of winding up in the hospital or the ICU or even worse from this disease, and that we know, And so side effects, the most common side effect is an achy arm, and that does happen. And I'm speaking specifically about the 2 vaccines that have come out now already, the Moderna and the Pfizer vaccine, which are the ones that are approved thus far. And then a decent number of people will feel kind of achy and kind of like a mild flu-like illness for a day or two after they get the vaccine. And so, some can get a low-grade temp, feel a little wiped out for a day or two. But most people do fine. You cannot get COVID from the COVID vaccine. It does not. That's not possible. Could there be, episodes of more severe reactions? Of course, but we know that there's a risk of, very serious outcomes for people who actually get COVID. And we also know that this does protect. I mean, there's a 95% rate of protection for folks who get the vaccine in terms of developing clinical illness compared to those who don't. And interestingly, in the Pfizer study, in the African American subgroup analysis
Yes.
of the people who got it, which was I think 8% of the or 9% of the total trial participants, which isn't quite representative of the 14% of blacks in our country, but better than a lot of studies do. But out of the black folks who got this vaccine, 0 of them got COVID-19, got symptomatic COVID-19, none of them. And so
you're making me feel a little better there. I appreciate that.
That's not to say that it's more effective in blacks than it is in other people, but it would suggest that it's as effective. So,
do you guys have any knowledge of, as far as the testing goes, they were doing this on, was it all people? Were they doing this on animals and people? Was it, I think none of us really know how that testing worked. Was it all ages from teenagers on up through? Did they start at like 18 and go up? Can you share any information maybe about what the testing process could have been?
Sure. I know that the Pfizer vaccine was 16 and up. In the trials, the 16-year-olds and up. And I think Moderna was maybe 18.
I'm not sure.
And up. And yeah, all comers. I know that I don't know who they excluded. I'm not sure what they did to exclude people, but I know for both these two, the Pfizer and Moderna trials, like they really tried to recruit a diverse group of people. And I shared that on the Kneel for 9 page that, it was something around like 9 or 10% Black. I think maybe even 20% Latino, Latina, and like 5 or 6% Asian, 1% Native American. So it was really impressive, actually, compared to other studies. How many, how much they tried to make this a diverse group of people. And then when you think about it, when you combine the number of people who were in the Pfizer and Moderna trials, it's something like 75,000, 60,000 people, because I think Pfizer was something like 40,000 participants, Moderna's was about 30,000. So that was, around 70,000, and say 10% were Black, then there are about, 7,000 people who have already gotten this vaccine, who got it months ago, and they're not seeing any serious side effects in that group of people. So it's a pretty significant number of people. Usually with vaccines, so Doug mentioned those immediate reactions, sore arm, fever, feeling lousy for a day or two. And then, usually if you're going to see more serious reactions, it'll be in like the first maybe 30 to 45 days after getting it, which is what I had seen online researching this. And, in the trials, like they haven't seen any, serious reactions to the vaccine. So that's really reassuring. Like some of these people got it, I don't know, back in months ago. Yeah, 6 months ago. And they still haven't seen anyone have a serious reaction.
And Jay, the wait and see part, like I hear you on that. I hear the and I've even heard some of my physician colleagues say that. And yet, what it seems like is that the vaccine is safe, and what we know is that there's still a lot of COVID circulating in the community. And there will be for months to come, unfortunately. This isn't going to go away tomorrow. And so for every month you wait to get it, that's a month where you're exposed to this virus. And not only are you exposed to it personally, but you're exposed to getting it yourself and then passing it on to someone else who is more vulnerable. So I think that's an important element of the discussion about vaccines too, is that getting a vaccine is actually an act of altruism. It's not just showing care and concern for yourself, which is valuable. Absolutely. But it's also taking yourself out of the vector pool where you could be the one that passes it on to grandma who winds up in the ICU or worse. And so I think looking at it not only through the lens of what it does for you, but what it does for those around you is a really important part of the discussion.
Hey, I appreciate that. I want to just take a moment for those that are watching. I want to encourage you to share this feed, share it to your page, share it to other friends' pages as well. We're here with Doug and Ruth Lindberg, who are family physicians, having a conversation around COVID-19, around vaccinations. We have about 1 million questions that have come in with people just asking all kinds of things. I'm gonna try to make sure we at least stay on topic because I'm getting some other interesting stuff being asked as well. And who knows, maybe we'll hit some of those later on. But I want to just say quickly, thank you again for this time. And I want to make sure that those that are watching will know I have to put this in here. And this is our disclaimer for the night. You need to make sure that you're having these conversations with your primary care physician. These are opinions that we're giving you. We're giving you thoughts. We're giving you ideas. We're letting you know more information. Please do not take this as the medical advice for you that you need to go do X or Y. Because if you do grow that third leg, I don't want you calling me and saying it's Jay's fault because he had. Nope, just take you and your third leg down to the hospital and get that looked at. Don't call me. Don't send me a letter. Don't write me a note or send me a picture. I don't want to see it. So I just want to clarify. This is not medical advice. These are opinions we are giving. Do not hold Doug or Ruth or Plain English or Jay English or anybody associated with any of us accountable for you and your third foot. All right. All right. I'm playing around a little bit, but I do want to make sure you know that.
Third leg might be useful.
You said it might be you.
Could be more stable.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Got an extra.
Could be, man. You know, all-star in soccer. You ready to go? All right. So let's hit. I've got another really good question here. We've got a lot of really good questions here. So there was the conversation, and you mentioned about, how this is an act of altruism of getting its vaccine. That leads me to a question about, this whole idea of wearing masks. And I've heard that even if you take the vaccine, it's still recommended to wear a mask, to still practice social distancing. Can you help me, people who are like me, better understand why wearing a mask is useful, is needed? Is it needed? Are we going overboard, or should this be something everybody's doing?
So the outcome that they studied with this particular vaccine is clinical illness. So meaning people have symptoms of COVID and test positive for COVID. So it didn't. The studies have not looked at whether or not they developed subclinical disease, and so asymptomatic disease. So COVID itself, 30 to 40% of people who have COVID-19 in the community don't have symptoms. They don't know they had it. Yeah. And yet they can still spread it. And so there's concern that it's possible that while most vaccines do prevent illness, that we still could be seeing a situation where the vaccine prevents people from becoming symptomatic, but doesn't necessarily prevent them from having the virus. Wow. So it's still important until we obtain like this elusive herd immunity that people talk about, or seeing the levels of COVID drop significantly and more people either immune or having gotten vaccinated, that we continue to try and protect each other by wearing masks and social distancing. So unfortunately, that's still going to be with us for a few months, even if you've been vaccinated.
Wow. Okay.
I would say, should we be wearing masks? Was the question also, should we, how helpful are masks in general, or just?
Yes, because, obviously that started out being a major issue.
Sure.
At first it was kind of, you don't necessarily need to wear a mask. They're telling us that was because they're trying to save them for physicians. Then later on, as things became worse, it was everybody needs to put on a mask. And that led to all types of interesting behavior, from people storming into the Capitol with guns and people upset, other people who are trying to wear masks and people in their family who are refusing. So it's just, trying to get a better understanding of what does me putting on, this mask from Walgreens or that I buy on Amazon, how does that benefit myself or the people around me?
I think, so when we're speaking or breathing or coughing, we're all sorts of particles are coming out of our mouth, Yes. And going like 6 feet apart. So, if I'm talking to you and we're only 3 feet apart, like a bunch of my spit and droplets are landing on you. So if I've got a mask on, then those don't end up on you, or end up being in your airspace where then you can breathe them in. And so there's bigger particles which, can get caught in the mask. There's smaller ones, which we call aerosols, which, that maybe they might be able to get through that mask. But if we're doing a bunch of different things to protect one another, like staying 6 feet apart or being outside or keeping a window open, we layer those things together, then we can protect each other. And so the masks are just one layer. I've seen one illustration of like a bunch of slices of Swiss cheese all kind of next to each other. And so, if masks are one layer of that, some of the virus still might be able to go through that, but then your other layer is, we're 6 feet apart. And the other layers, we've got good ventilation. And so if we can use all those things to protect one another, then we can, it actually can be very helpful.
And tighter masks are better. Don't use it as a chin diaper.
I've seen that often.
Cover your nose. I mean, it's not a silver bullet, but it's one of the things we can do to reduce risk. So
awesome. Let's jump to another one here. So there's a person that's actually suffering from looks like autoimmune disease, and they're saying, they taking an immune suppressant, and they're suffering what their doctor is saying is long COVID. So they just wanted to know, does it do them any good to take the vaccine if they basically don't have an immune system? Are there risks for that, or just what are your thoughts more so than anything when you hear something like that?
I think in those sorts of situations, it's important to have that conversation with your doctor, because it starts to vary based on the individual and the individual conditions that you have. Mm-hmm. The thing with folks who have autoimmune issues or who are on immunosuppressants is that I understand there's some hesitancy, and yet if they get COVID, they're at higher risk for complications than Ruth or I would be, or you would be, Jay. And so, in that sense, it's that much more important for them to be vaccinated. Now, for someone who's had the virus previously, the current recommendations from what I've been reading is that you can wait like 3 months after you initially were sick, prior to thinking about getting vaccinated, and that's, stay tuned on that. There's still a lot we don't know about these vaccines, how long the immunity lasts, if there'll be booster doses needed, if that's different from one vaccine to the other. That stuff we have to stay tuned on because we don't know answers for that. But generally speaking, autoimmune conditions and being on immunosuppressants would not be a reason not to get vaccinated.
Okay. No, that's helpful. There's a question here that's asking, they're saying that the rate of recovery seems to be about 95% or more for people that have contracted COVID. Why is a vaccine needed if the rate of recovery is that high?
You want to take it?
Like he's like, Ruth, go ahead, just take that one.
I'm happy to take this one.
So I like how she looked at you back though, like, no, you can go ahead, you got it.
So I mean, we've lost over 300,000 people in this country alone, and that's not to mention over 1 million in the world since it started. And you put that in the context of like what happened on 9/11 and the degree of tragedy that we've suffered is dramatic. And yes, while it's true that, most people do recover from this, but a lot don't. And even with all the social distancing and mitigating measures that we've taken as a society during this time, I mean, our hospitals, you look at what's happening in California right now, they're starting to have to ration care. And their ICUs are full, and our hospitals, we're getting a little bit of a let up here in terms of hospital rate, but hospitalizations, but still, even now it's full. And so the tax that it's been on our healthcare system, not to mention the number of people who have died from this, particularly the most vulnerable among us, this is a big deal. And if we just become passive about it and say, oh, what will be, it will be even worse. So
I mean, what percentage of people in our country have gotten it so far? What are the estimates? Something like maybe 15-20% of the population.
We're still a long way from herd immunity without a vaccine.
So if we've had this many deaths with only that percentage of the population getting infected, then if we don't get immunity through herd immunity through vaccination, like it's that many more deaths and hospitalization. And then also the person who just asked that question said that she has long haul COVID. It's not just I get sick and die, or I get an infection and I'm asymptomatic, or I'm a little sick and then I get better. There's a significant number of people who months after the fact are still having chronic symptoms from this. Wow. And we don't know how long that's going to last, and so that it's that, and that's something it could, for all we know, could be lifelong. So.
Yeah.
Wow.
Jay, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
So one of the things that we wanted to that we were hoping to discuss here was just some of the healthcare disparities that exist in communities of color in our city, in our country, and to just talk about how that impacts how people are viewing this vaccine, and what's behind that, and what would help in terms of helping to allay some of the fears about this vaccine specifically, with the backdrop of all that's gone on and the current realities that exist for Black folks and Latinx folks and other people of color in our society.
Yeah, I think there's the mistrust goes back. I mean, we're talking, a couple hundred years of medical science being practiced on us. And by practiced, literally practiced, hey, we're going to experiment on African Americans because society, especially we going back, 1800s, let's go into the early 1900s, even through, the Tuskegee experiment lasted all the way up through 1972, where when they decided to try to find out what the effects of something were, they would typically go find some minorities and inject them, or let the disease have its way with them, or lie to them, or put them in experimental procedures. There's been a history of minorities, not just African Americans, Hispanics as well, who would go in for routine surgeries and come out sterile. These are stories that have been passed down from friends and family from decades ago. Then there are the horror stories where you have a doctor or you have a primary care physician that you go to and you bring them issues or problems that you're facing, things you're dealing with, and you feel like something's really wrong, and they're telling you, no, you're fine, or they're prescribing you something. And finally it gets so bad, you go somewhere else and you find out that you've got something that should have been caught months ago. I know a number of people who have had bad experiences, and I'm not saying that there's not room for error, but when it's some of these egregious things of, things that this new physician is looking at and saying, I don't know how they didn't catch this. I don't know why they prescribed that for you. I don't know why they didn't take what you were saying more serious. I was reading up on even some studies this past couple of weeks where there's a portion of the medical field that still believes that Black people don't feel pain the same way as white people. That's scary, when you hear things like that. And I know that was true in the past. We know that was true in the past, but to hear in, the 21st century that there's still some thought process out there that we're not the same kind of people as everyone else, it makes you less likely to go to a doctor. It makes you less likely to want to get a vaccine that shows up. It makes you question things. If I'm being honest, so my family obviously comes from down south. My father's side is from Alabama. A majority of his family died from things that probably could have been prevented had they have gotten proper medical care. But because of the lack of trust, a lot of African Americans won't even go, which is why we typically end up with the ER bill. We'll go when there's absolutely no other option. It's so bad, I can't sleep. It's so terrible, I don't know what to do. Hey, my arm's turning colors. I'll go to the ER because I don't have a choice. And that's a lot of time. That's where we see our doctor, as opposed to regular checkups, physicals, asking these type of questions and having these conversations preemptively. You can look at our issues with specifically colon cancer for men who don't want to go get prostate checked and a number of other things. So I think it's such a large group of reasons, and all of them lead to the same result of we're not getting the care we probably need, whether that's because of the disparities that already exist, because of the disparities that we create by not going on our own, to your point of not being willing to take vaccines because we don't trust it. And then the cycle just continues where now we're already being affected disproportionately. We're 3 to 5 times more likely to end up in the hospital, to end up in ICU as compared to Caucasians. And these are real things that we're navigating. I had a gentleman ask me, he was like, if I thought, do you think it's something in the DNA of Black people that makes us different? I was like, no, we're still people. We're just like you. So you have all of this stuff floating out here. And people are trying to make the best decisions they can, but they're scared. I think that's just what it comes down to. There is a healthy fear that we have that maybe not enough African Americans were tested, that maybe, when I hear, and again, because we don't know the medical terminology, if I hear, hey, there were 10% African Americans, I'm like, I don't know if that's enough. Maybe if it was 40%, I'd feel better. Well, I don't even know if that's realistic, but just hearing the numbers with no one to explain that is actually really good for this type of thing. We hear numbers like 10% in the trials, and we're like, 10%? How do I know I'm not part of the 90 that's left? Well, the 10% didn't have any problems. Well, that's great. Well, what if I'm in the other group? That's how we think. That's how we talk to each other. And that's where I think we are at this point of the conversation. Does that help answer some of what you asked?
Yeah.
So, as far as what, I almost have to ask you, I don't know what more we can do outside of what I'm doing right now. We have to, those of us who have influence and have platforms and have the ability to have these conversations in public, we've got to have them. We've got to get people to watch it. We got to get people to listen. We have to get people to go question their doctors and to take this information and go to their primary care or go wherever they get care and to really discuss these to figure out what the best move is. But my community, we're stubborn. We're difficult when this medical thing is not brand new. It's not just COVID. So, it's really not just COVID. This is across the board for a number of issues.
Yeah. Thank you, Jay. And I just think about how, trust is earned, and that, we as a medical community, that the Black community has reasons not to trust us, not just historical reasons, but reasons that happen every single day. We hear horror stories and so I guess the question that I would have would be, what can we as the medical community do to earn trust? Because we know that we need to earn that. We need to show that we're trustworthy. And
you know what? Now, again, I'm speaking on behalf of Black people, and any Black people that's watching this, feel free to put it in the chat if I'm completely misrepresenting you. From my experience, trust as far as the community of the medical field, I don't know if that'll ever happen. What typically we do we will find one doctor that we have a great relationship with, and we will go to them until they die or we die. We don't really want a second opinion. I don't want to talk to anybody else. I don't want to start this process over. I trust you. And we culturally, we're highly relational. Just about everything comes down to relationship for our community. I've told people in my sessions, like, if we don't like you as a person, you may even have the answer we need and we won't take it. Like, we're those culturally, that's just kind of how we are. If we don't like you, we don't want you helping us with much of anything. So what it comes down to, typically for us, if we can build a relationship with a good professional, a good doctor, we will attend and bring every issue to that one doctor. We'll try to get him to answer questions for stuff he's not even qualified to answer because I don't want to go see somebody else, because I have a relationship with you. I trust you. We'll tell our family, we'll tell our friends, hey, I found a good doctor. You should go see X. So when we do latch onto a person, we'll be the number one sellers of bringing people to that physician. But it takes a lot of time. It takes somebody who's willing to do what you're doing right now. Are you willing to sit down with me? Are you willing to take time with me? When I go for my physicals, the worst thing a doctor can do to me is get me in and out and not have conversation with me. I hate that. I need somebody that's going to sit down, hold my hand through this, tell me what you're doing, tell me why you're doing it, talk to me about my kids, talk to me about my parents, ask me questions. I'm already nervous coming here. I can't help it. Help put me at ease. Talk to me like a person. Don't treat me like a number. Those things go a long way for us because we already don't want to be there. We already are fighting against the grain to show up, to go through a physical, or to go through whatever we might be dealing with. And if you take some time, if you show me you care personally, and I don't think the entire medical community can do that. So, speaking for myself and a lot of people that I'm associated with, it really takes people like you and the people you have an influence with. If you can get people to spend more time in the spaces and with the people who have influence in our communities to have these type of conversations. I need you to be a real person. I need to feel like you understand why I'm nervous. You understand why there's a mistrust, and you're doing everything possible to not just earn my trust, but to maintain that trust. You're going to tell me what I need to know, not necessarily what I want to hear, but you're going to do it in a way that respects my dignity as a person, that you have some concern for how that affects me and my family. If you're a doctor, you're going to see and hear the most intimate details of my life. I need you to be my best friend. Like every time I show up to see you, I want you to remember me. I want you to remember my name. And I'm not saying that this is realistic, but I'm being honest. It's hard for us. So typically from a bird's eye view of the medical field, I don't know if we'll ever get there. I don't know. I doubt it personally, because I think that much damage has been done on such a large scale. But the people that I know that have built relationships with a physician, they'll go on a heartbeat. They'll tell that doctor everything. And they will only go see another doctor if that doctor recommends and says, I know this person, they're going to take care of you. I'm going to call and make sure they know you're coming. That stuff puts us at ease.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Jay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
What are you thinking, Doug? I see the wheels turning.
Yeah. I'm thinking of bringing it back around to the discussion with this vaccine and with COVID. And we were talking about this a little bit before we got on the call about how if there are concentrated pockets of folks who opt not to vaccinate, and let's face it, we live in Milwaukee, which is the most segregated city in the United States, correct?
It is. Yep. Number one.
And so if only, a small percentage of Black folks are taking the vaccine, then for reasons that I get it, you know, what you're saying, it makes sense to me. Why there's suspicion and mistrust and whatnot. And yet, if that happens, then that in and of itself goes on to further these healthcare disparities that we see, because people then in your community, you're more exposed to it. And then the hospitals serving those communities are still going to be full and overtaxed compared to places that have, you know, a higher vaccination rate. And so it's this self-fulfilling prophecy that starts to snowball downhill.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just wish there was some sort of a magic wand that we could say, okay, I understand, but just for this one thing, just for this one thing,
wipe it all away.
Yeah, we can still, you know, I completely acknowledge it, but just if you could just do this vaccine, then this issue can get
we'll navigate the rest after this.
Right. But I know that's completely oversimplifying and probably unrealistic, but yeah, it's a big fear of mine is that this disparity gets magnified again because of the understandable mistrust that's there over something at this point that seems like it's trustworthy.
Let me ask you all a question, even as we're talking about this. Obviously, you know, again, you all came on with me and you're having this conversation, and this, I feel more of this has to happen specifically in my communities. Are you open to having more conversations if people reached out and were interested in having you come into a church or to do something over Zoom? Is that something that you all are open to, or just what are kind of your thoughts of this?
100%.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think, you know, well, right now, you know, it's a bunch of people watching. And I'm just going to put this out there for those of you that are watching this, specifically in African-American communities or minority communities, if you have the influence and a platform, I want you to feel free to reach out to Doug and Ruth about having these conversations, utilizing your platform, lend your credibility. You know, that's what I feel like I'm trying to do right now. There are people that might not know you, but they know me. They know that I'm only going to have these type of conversations with certain type of people. Again, our community comes down to relationship. And I don't think there's so many other cultures that don't really get that. That's where it is. So my relationship with you lends credibility when you speak to my community, because people in my community know what I stand for and they know how I am about people. They know, okay, he wouldn't just have just anybody on here talking whatever. So friends of mine, people that I'm associated with, might be more likely to listen to you because they know I have a relationship. Mm-hmm. So for those of you that are watching, I'm asking you to use your credibility, use your influence, use your platforms, and let's engage in more conversations. If that's specifically with Doug and Ruth, if there's other people you know that have this type of expertise, maybe it's even contacting you two. And if there's other physicians that you know of that will be open to having those conversations as well, I think that could be really helpful. The more we can have general conversations like this, the better I think that will be for those that are really struggling in this area. What I want to do, it's about 7:53. I want to ask if you're okay if we run over a little bit because we're getting a lot of questions. I want to ask a few more questions that we have showing up, if that's okay with you.
Yeah.
Sure. We have time.
Awesome. So there is, and I've heard, and it's part of this question, but I've heard about a new strand of the coronavirus that was found in the UK. And their question is, you know, even with taking this current vaccine, how does that work with new mutated strands? Obviously, we're aware of the flu, and I have no idea if this is similar or not, but with the flu, you take the vaccine, and it's pretty much for the flu from last year, you know, from whatever the strand was. Is this similar, where we're taking a vaccine that's for a specific strand? Does it cover more, or, you know, would we potentially be looking at, hey, there may need to be another vaccine as variants show up?
I can see what I think.
Okay, go ahead.
I don't think we know the answer to that yet.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, that it's possible that this could be something like the flu, where every year it's different and we need to have a new vaccination. I think time will tell.
Or immunity could wane and you need a booster.
Yeah. That's also another reason to get a vaccine maybe in the future. I think it's just so new, but when I was just listening to a radio interview by today about this strain, and that there's something like 23 mutations in this compared to what's been circulating, and that it's what they think in the UK, but I don't know if they know this for sure, is that it's making it so that it's more easily transmissible, that it can be spread more easily, is what I've read about it.
Yeah, not necessarily more pathogenic, so not necessarily causing worse illness, but probably more transmissible from what they understand. This type of vaccine, it's different than the flu vaccine. This is these two vaccines that have come out, the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccines, are mRNA vaccines. These are the first of their kind vaccines that have ever been been brought to market, and they've been being researched for many years. And it was really a amazing confluence of almost a miraculous confluence of circumstances to where this technology was available at the time when we needed it. And when you talk to infectious disease experts earlier on, people were hoping for something that was 50-60% effective, based on old numbers. And so for this to be 95% effective, people were over the moon for it. Okay. And without getting into the details, there's a good chance that the vaccine that we're using now will cover this strain too. But like Ruth said, there's a lot of stuff about this that we don't know. And, speaking about honesty and not deceiving people and not leading them down a path that we don't know about, we have to be transparent with it. There's a lot of stuff we still don't know. Yes. And so we can say, we think this is what's going to happen. We think that the vaccine will work against this. We think that, that you'll be protected, but we, the medical community and the scientists will continue to study it, and time will tell.
I appreciate the honesty. I think that's what's needed. Just, hey, we don't know yet. There's not enough information or whatever that may be. I think that's what helps people as far as listening, especially when they're listening to you talk about it. If you're just giving us answers, I think that's part of being a real person as well. Hey, there's certain things you don't know, and you're giving us your best opinion, which I truly appreciate. There is another question here. Now, I'm not sure how to pronounce this. You all may have a better idea, but it basically says, for someone like myself whose body does not detox toxins properly, and they put MTHFR. Are you all familiar with that? Mm. Okay, so they're just asking, if there's any concerns from being vaccinated in reference to their body not detoxing properly.
So I wouldn't have concerns about it. So this vaccine doesn't require preservatives because it's kept at such cold temperatures, because the mRNA degrades if it gets warm. So this, it's probably safe. Again, there are going to be individuals who have side effects from this vaccine. And I think that's an important point to touch on too, is that, if 1 million people have someone wave their hand over their arm, a certain percentage of those people in the next month are going to die from a heart attack, or they're going to have something bad or terrible happen to them. And it's not because someone waved their hand over their arm. It's because we live in a fallen world,
yes.
And so it doesn't mean that what happened just before was causative. And so I think we have to be aware of that as we're watching the news, as this vaccine rolls out, that you don't attribute every bad outcome to the vaccine, because we have to see what happens in what they call the post-marketing surveillance. And could it cause something bad? It could. That's possible, but from what we can tell, they're pretty safe. And so I would reassure this individual that it's likely safe for them to go ahead and take it.
But that, talk to your doctor.
Yes, talk to your doctor still.
Because they know
That's
you,
always the
they know you
disclaimer.
best.
Yes. Nope. That's absolutely right. Make sure you talk to your doctor. We're not giving you medical advice. We're giving you opinions.
Otherwise, here's Ruth's third arm.
I thought it was a leg. I thought it was just another leg.
So you
I grew white man arm.
So I want to ask you one last question before I let you go. And I'm so truly thankful for you two. Please know that, and being able to have this conversation and be as open, as honest as I can be about how I felt about this, and even getting the questions from other people who are so serious. I really appreciate you all taking this time. Now, you all are physicians. You major in taking care of people and providing care. There, in my mind, I struggle sometimes because I come across people. So I call people super saints. I call people who are so saved that, I refuse to say I'm sick because I'm claiming it. I refuse to see a doctor because Jesus will heal me, and I'm happy for you. But there are people who literally, pastors, there's been a number of churches and things like that who are walking in this way of saying, COVID can't harm me. I'm a child of God. My faith trumps everything. So my question with physicians here, how do you balance your faith and your practice? How do you see what you do as being a gift given to you by God, as something that God provides for us? I believe that medicine is something that Jesus doesn't mind us using, to say it simply. But how have you been able to balance who you are, obviously as a physician, but I know you all from Embrook Church. I know the work that you all do. Doug, I know you're on the board. You're working on some racial reconciliation things for the church. How do you balance who you are as a doctor, but as well as who you are as far as your faith goes?
Great question. Sure. I think that medicine is a gift from God. That I'll just share from my own personal experience with health. I'm a cancer survivor.
Okay.
I was 35 years old, diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. And so we prayed and I started chemo, and just knowing like these are two gifts, and we had other people praying for me, and we did both, this is a story for another time. I was miraculously healed from cancer, like a legit.
That's amazing. Yes.
Yeah. It has been 5 years for now, but I think for that being in my history though, like I know that, I am a child of God and I don't have to live in fear, and that Jesus is a rescuer, but this is a fallen world and bad things happen, And so to also be aware of that, what we just need to, with COVID specifically, I mean, how Doug said, like, this is a miraculous confluence of events that we have this technology at the exact right time that we need it. Like, this is a gift from God, that there are people who are brilliant, so brilliant that they could come up with something like this.
Yes.
that could get us out of this pandemic. Like, this is truly an amazing thing, an answer to prayer, truly an answer to prayer. So yeah, I would just, when it's my turn to get that vaccine, I'm still waiting for my employer to let me know when I can get it. But like, I'll say prayer, thanksgiving to Jesus, and just get emotional, just knowing like this is an answer to so many of our prayers to end this misery that, the whole world has been going through.
Wow.
At the risk of oversimplifying it, one of our pastors at church said, I believe in God. I also believe in soap.
Thank God for soap.
So, take what we've taken. Yes, pray, but also do what we can to be healthy and use that which He has given us to be healthy. So.
Oh, that's awesome. Did you guys have any last final words you wanted to give, or anything you would like to say to those that have been watching or that are watching currently, or maybe will be watching even as this is on replay?
Yeah, I'd echo what you said before. We're available. We're happy to talk with folks, or to go and speak at a church or whatever's helpful. We understand people being hesitant, and we all have to make this decision for ourselves in terms of how we're handling this. And yet, I think we have to look out for ourselves. We have to realize, I think, that we're not only looking out for ourselves as we make these decisions, but we're looking out for our communities too, right? Because the decisions we make for ourselves affect those around us. And so as we weigh these options, to keep that in mind.
Yeah, I was thinking too, and sometimes when I'm, seeing a patient and they're trying to make a decision, and I'm giving them, my advice, I'll say to them, like, if you were my sister, I would tell you to do this, And literally, I actually had that conversation with my sister. She texted me a few days ago, like, I could get the vaccine. Should I get it? And I said, yes, please get it. And so, so Jay, to you, I was thinking, well, if Jay were my brother, but you are my brother. Yes. You're my brother in Christ. And so it's like, well, you are my brother. So as my brother, this is my advice that I would give to you. And then when my advice would be to say, yeah, when you can get the vaccine, get it. And, just the same as I said to my biological sister a few days ago when she said, should I get it now? I said, yes, you should get it. So that's my advice.
Awesome. Well, you all, thank you so much for this time, for this conversation, for us getting to laugh about the third foot. I'm gonna replay that over for myself, for my own personal entertainment. But this was, I feel like it needed to happen. It's something that is such a hot topic, and everyone is talking about this and trying to debate on what they're going to do. So thank you for your time, for your expertise, and for being able to just provide some insight and making yourselves available. I want to, again, challenge those of you that are out there. If you have influence, if you have a platform, if you have opportunities, whether that's connecting with the Lindbergs, or maybe that's someone completely different that you have trust and belief in, and saying, hey, I want to have this conversation, and I'm going to bring all my family together on a Zoom. I'm going to get some friends together. Maybe that's your church. Maybe that's your organization, whatever that is. Let's make these conversations readily available and help, use our credibility to get these conversations out into the public sphere, specifically within the Black and Brown communities. So again, Doug and Ruth, thank you so much. For those of you that are watching, thank you for your questions. Thank you for your patience. Please share this, send this out to friends and family, have them take a look. Please go and if you don't have a primary care physician, please get one. If you have one, please go see them. Please ask them questions, have conversations, and figure out what the best thing is for you and your family. But know that we're available. This is why Kneel for 9 was created. This is why Plain English was created. It was to literally have cross-cultural conversations in a way that's going to benefit all of us so that we can make better decisions collectively. So thank you all for all the work you're doing. I know I will be talking to you all soon. Again, you are honorary family, so please know that. And I'm going to let everyone else go. We're going to hang out for a little bit more. But thank you, everybody, for this time. And we look forward to catching up with you soon. Take care.